Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, all you citizens of the world, it's time for another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. I'm Michael James. I'm here in Chicago in the very blue 49th Ward. And we are recording on Wednesday, June 25th for the week of June 27th. There's a lot of news to share if we want to get into it all. People, I'm sure, are very much attuned to that Trump bombed nuclear facilities in Iran. Israel and Iran are trading fire back and forth and now have a sort of a ceasefire. A lot of claims by Trump to have wiped out all those nuclear facilities. Apparently, that is really not true. It just sets Iran back. The question of nuclear proliferation is a big one for all of us and the future of the world, and we'll keep you tuned on what we know about that. Big news, though, for those of us who follow electoral politics and have grumbled for a long time about the direction of the Democratic Party or the lack of unified direction in a progressive way, is an election in New York, a Democratic primary, to see who will be on the ballot as a Democrat. It pitted a young fellow named Zoran Mandami, a 33-year-old state assemblyman from New York City. Originally, he was from Uganda. His parents are, his mother is a filmmaker, dad is a professor, and he's a state legislator. He was victorious over the former governor, Cuomo. Cuomo gave a concession talk at the end of the night. We'll see if he decides to run as an independent. But what really is exciting about this is the youth are speaking up. Alexandria Cortez and Bernie Sanders both backed Mandami. And people like Bill Clinton and Congressman Clyburn in South Carolina and a lot of old line Democrats came out for Cuomo. The victory was pretty sound. Young people can make a difference, and it's been hard for them to support the Democrats. I continually bring up on this show the question of Gaza and how the United States is supporting Israel in so many ways with minimal critiques, and in reality, on the ground is really horrific that the world has sort of stood by while over 56,000 people are now dead in Gaza. Young people didn't want to turn out much for Joe Biden's successor, Harris, in the last election because they were focused on Gaza and other things. And this clearly was a renunciation of the old line Democratic policies, and it gives hope, possibly an example, a roadmap. Has a lot of ramifications for going forward. If we want to get young people to participate in electoral politics and be part of a larger Democratic tent, we need to pay attention to things like this. And Mandami's victory just shoves it down the old line's throat. He also is really talking about affordability for younger people who have paid their money to go to college or not and just facing economic stress in these times. This is a call. It's a call for them to rally because he talked a lot about rent prices. He talked about transportation. He talked about a lot of things that people's lives are affected by daily. And hopefully he'll win that election. I was very happy to learn about all this. All right, enough of that. Today we're going to have a few interesting guests. We're going to have Torrence Gardner coming on, and he is a member of Protect Rogers Park. He's also the manager of policy change on the People, Power, and Policy team at the Chicago Community Trust. And we'll be talking immigration and ICE. A little bit later in the show, we're going to bring on Cousin Adam James, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Dodgers' response to ICE attempting to set up in their parking lot. That will be our sports report. And we're bringing on the author, Ron Schulz. I know him from the old days. He's cranking out the books right and left. He has a new one out called Teenage Runaway. And so those two gentlemen will be in the second half of Live from the Heartland. With all that said, let's have a short musical break, and we'll be right back with our first guest, Torrence Gardner. Stay tuned here on the left end of your dial or however you're getting Live from the Heartland for the week of June 27th.
Alberto hits his brother on the back of the head. Looks to the north as he starts to get up. His brother still sleepy, grumbles it's not light yet. If you want a new life, what's a few minutes wait? Darkness on the road and over the land, into the laws and out of the hands from those with so much and no show of heart. You think it'd be crazy to ask for a small part.
Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of June 27th. And now we're going to have a guest who's been on the show before, Torrence Gardner. He's a co-founder of Protect Rogers Park. And he was on the show early in the year when all this horrendous dealing with immigrants began. And we talked about Protect Rogers Park, which was founded a few years back. We're going to catch up and see what we know or we can learn about ICE and immigration status for people here in Chicago. So good day to you, Torrence, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me on the show. Always a pleasure speaking with you all.
So give us a little brief rundown of how Protect Rogers Park got started and what were the issues then and what are the issues now?
Yeah, so in 2016, when Trump's first term, we formed very quickly. We saw all of our neighbors who were undocumented, very fearful of their lives. People quickly forget how long ago that was, but this is the second iteration. And we formed a hotline number and formed a volunteer support group very quickly while he was basically in his second month in office in 2016. We expanded a very large network, it's about 300 to 400 people, held trainings, taught people how to verify, how to contact support networks like the legal assistance networks that were out there at that time, as well as how to work with different stakeholders like parents, principals, and other stakeholders in our communities to form a network to best support each other in all aspects.
What's your sense about the role of ICE and their activity in Chicago and in Illinois in a broader way?
Yeah, clearly things have escalated. Let's just be frank about it, right? So ICE was formed in 2003. And then from 2003, it's ICE, each president, regardless of party, has funded ICE. They were formed, from my understanding, by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It was established as part of the Department of Homeland Security. And again, they've been seeing their funding steadily move up. I know they're requesting more money with this big, beautiful bill. And with that escalation means more arrests, means more folks being detained for all types of reasons, means more personnel moving into potentially our communities in a more direct way that we are starting to see more and more. I will call out, Chicago's had a lot of sightings, but they are definitely looking at the suburbs. We know for a fact Elgin and other places in like the northwest suburbs are being targeted because they have less organizational infrastructure like we have throughout Chicago's neighborhoods. So that's one thing folks need to be aware of who live out in those suburban communities.
Well, that's interesting to hear that not as much in Chicago, but just before everything broke loose in Los Angeles, and we still have National Guard there under the control of the president, not the governor. We have a battalion or whatever of Marines that are there. There had been an incident in Chicago where ICE people went to I don't know if it was a federal building or it was someplace where people were probably having hearings and something came down. Can you give us a little report on that? And is that typical or is that unique?
So if you refer to the federal agents that detained at least like 10 people who were told to check into a monitoring program in the South Loop.
Right. That's what it was after.
Yeah. So that was, pretty much it sounded like a third party sent a message out to folks who were told to check in, follow the legal process. They responded to what they were told to do via some third party. I'm not aware of which third party that was at this time or who's being the third parties in connection with ICE, but they were reported to go to the office building at 2245 South Michigan. And basically that's when everyone saw what happened. They detained these folks. One person, I believe from OCAD, Organizing Communities Against Deportation, was taken as well. And then that's when the aldermen and a bunch of community activists, our org and other orgs and a bunch of orgs came down to protest directly and stop what was happening there.
Have there been any dramatic rescue, so to speak, when ICE people were attempting to arrest people? Have we seen anyone get free or run away or or are they pretty much ICE is dominant in these little encounters?
From my understanding, ICE has been pretty dominant. There are definitely close calls where an alert could go out and folks are told to basically hide or go to another building. Those are hard to see how many times that has occurred, but from reports that I know and connect communications I'm aware of, there have been opportunities for folks that have gotten away from being taken. I can't tell you how many, but it definitely has occurred based on the communication systems that are in place region-wide that is being currently further built out. It is beautiful to see, Michael, that other even suburban communities are stepping up that normally have not in past years because they are starting to get targeted more and more. And that's where the fight is growing more, is because they're not as organized. They're trying to get more organized.
Well, it was really interesting to hear about the suburbs and people stepping up. I'm wondering, who are these ICE people? Do we have any idea? I mean, are they the Proud Boys? Are they people who were involved in insurrection, at the end of Trump's last term? What do we know about them? Are they ex-cons?
It's hard to say because they come with face coverings, right? So first off, they already blocked their identity. What we can know for sure is they're made up of four main investigators. So there's the Homeland Security investigation folks. There's the enforcement and removal operations folks. There's another kind of group of people called management administration. Then they include all these other special agents and kind of deportation officers that no one really understands what their background really is. And again, it makes it very difficult when their face is covered and you're being taken away by someone and people are watching people being taken by people you don't even know what their face even looks like. So it's hard to fully say until more investigations happen. There have been obviously folks who feel like these are folks who are part of other groups. How verifiable that is still to be determined fully, I believe.
They're busting people apparently without warrants. I mean, is there any legal any legal things we can do to slow them down, or are they just, when they go in and after someone, they got a whole bunch of people and they grab them? Like we saw the father of those three Marines on TV. One of them had been a Marine. Two are in the Marines. Their dad was doing yard work in a shopping center. And these guys, there was probably 10, 15 of them, and they were beating the guy. And I'm just...
Yeah. No, it's why we preach know your rights, Michael. It's why we know your rights thing is so critical. If ICE agents stop you, you have the right to remain silent. You can ask, am I free to go? ICE cannot search you without consent. If an agent tries to search your belongings, you say clearly, I do not consent to this search. If they come to your house, do not open the door. Ask ICE to slide the warrant under the door if you have to. You have the right to remain silent. So these are all know your rights things we preach, Protect RP and other orgs are preaching. That's the biggest thing people have to understand and keep being notified about.
Do you have, show me your ID? Do you have a warrant? I have a right to remain silent. Does that work? I mean, I keep seeing these things where
Yeah.
yelling that out, and people, and they're still just grabbing people without identifying themselves. And I'm not sure how those things play out in court, or if there's even any court stuff involved.
So if that occurs, which of course they do ignore it all the time, there's a group called the National Lawyers Guild Chicago.
Right on, long time activists.
Yeah, they're the biggest partner in supporting people who've been unlawfully taken and arrested, especially in those protests and things of that nature. But everyone is overrun. A lot of the lawyer advocacy agencies are overrun at this point. But that is the only approach that we are aware of at this current time is the NLG hotline.
You know, we've seen on the TV where Democratic politicians have gone to these privatized ICE incarceration facilities and, have really challenged them to wanting to go in to inspect. And we know that there's a congresswoman in New Jersey who was indicted around that. We also saw on the news Congressman Garcia, and some other people going to a facility here in Illinois and making that demand that they get to see what's going on inside. We heard on that case of the father of those 3 Marines. He's been in jail for a number of days, very little water, very little food, no clean clothes, 1 toilet for 70 people in a small cell. What do you know about when Chewy and those people went to that facility, and in general, if anyone's able to get beyond this privatized incarceration?
Yeah, no, it's very concerning and alarming that our own representatives that we elect aren't being permitted into these buildings. It definitely speaks to the scariness of the times we live in. I'm not sure how we get beyond that. I've never seen that before. I don't think any of us have ever seen our own representatives not being allowed in a federal building to just see what's going on. So I think we're in unprecedented times, and I think we have to keep supporting each other at the community level, because clearly our representatives are also being targeted. And if they're being targeted, we're being targeted especially. So we're keeping doing what we do and making sure that we can do what we can to protect each other as best as possible. Yeah.
Well, you did point out that there's more activity by ICE in the suburbs where there's less resistance, but evolving resistance. But I really would love to hear if there's anything about happened here in Rogers Park. I mean, I saw one warning that ICE was on campus at Loyola, and then I'm not sure if that was true or not.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, when people up on the L platform being, afraid of who they see and they think ICE is there, what actually has happened in the 49th Ward that you know of, or anywhere close to here?
Yeah, so we have an ICE Watch signal thread that we track consistently with a lot of people on that thread. What I can tell you is we only have, at this point, 1 confirmed ICE one. That was at one particular house, probably back in January, if I recall correctly. The rest, we've had mostly false alarms, but we have people check it right away. We trained people to verify. We had a recent direct action training this past weekend at Living Water Community Church, where we're teaching people how to be better verifiers. If you get in conflict with ICE, what to do to protect yourself and things of that nature. So we only have had 1, I could say, in Rogers Park. Like I said, nearby, there were big actions that occurred from ICE, more in Albany Park, as of recently, I would say. But there's groups out there who've been forming and protecting themselves as well.
I heard somewhere that the Chicago police, who, some people have feared that they would be in cooperation with ICE, but we are a sanctuary city and we have certain regulations that the police are supposed to follow. What has been the relationship between the Chicago police and ICE's activities on the street, et cetera?
From what I know and what I've seen, it's been vague lately. That's why I'm glad Alderman Andre Vasquez called for investigations to figure out what is really going on. It's unclear. We're being told, based on people I know who had a meeting with the mayor's office, and based on what they're being told by CPD from that meeting with the mayor, that they were there at the recent protest in the South Loop that we previously mentioned on this call, that they were there to protect a CPD officer. And in other instances, they were just there to protect what's going on, making sure things just don't bubble over as they generally do in any protest setting. But again, that's being further investigated to see how accurate that is truly.
Well, I hope they're not involved. I mean, the Chicago police have learned a lot since 1968 about dealing with crowds. And we have had some, more progressive mayors. And so it's not like the old days, but probably has a ways to go. What do you recommend that people in general know and do, and how people get involved and sign up with you so that they can know how they can participate and help out?
Yeah, definitely recommend they email us at protectrp626@gmail.com. They can get plugged in from our monthly updates we give. And then we have kind of a Protect RP signal communications channel that folks can tap into by connecting with us via that email, and then they'd be plugged in via their phone, and they would get messages and alerts from their phone with the Signal app.
What's your, if you were a betting guy, what would you think about the future of ICE and where this all goes? Do you see the president being able to continue with all this bluster about it? Do you see resistance on the national front increasing? Any hope for the courts? Once in a while we get a decision from the court and the Supreme Court. We go, oh, wow, that's a change. But then we get decisions that are terrible. What's your kind of futuristic outlook about our situation?
I definitely see, since they're asking for ICE is asking for an increase of funding in the big, beautiful bill. If that passes, that is a very, very bad sign for everyone. They're going to increase their capacity and their efforts tenfold if they get that money. They're asking for billions of dollars of increase in their funds, which to me will only lead to more arrests and more of what we're seeing now at a maybe higher clip. I do predict resistance will start to flow, like I started saying, in the suburbs. And the goal is to see if that resistance stays strong and grows stronger from folks who normally aren't part of the fights like in the past. I think if that happens, then we'll be at a conflict inflection point. And where that goes, I don't know, but it's going to be a scary time because inflection points are dangerous, but it may inevitably lead to that part where more folks start to resist that normally have not.
Torrence Gardner, what's your sense of the privatization with ICE? I mean, we know that some of the prison facilities that they have are privatized. We even know that states are being involved, like Florida's building alligator jail, in the middle of the swamp. But what's your sense about how much of this privatization is going to go on and continue to go on?
I think it's going to go on because that's just the American way, right? Like privatization is the hallmark of the system we've been living in since almost decades at this point. So I think that's just the way it's always going to be.
Well, let's hope there's more and more resistance. And I really want to thank you for coming on one more time. Give us either a website and an email where people can contact you and members of Protect RP and be involved in case we need people to step up in case of emergencies when our neighbors are being snatched and grabbed.
Yeah, anyone who wants to connect with Protect Rogers Park, email protectrp626@gmail.com. Again, that's protectrp626@gmail.com.
Torrence Gardner, thanks a lot. I'll see you in the neighborhood.
All right, see you later.
Right on, brother. Thank you. And everyone else, you're listening to Live from the Heartland for the week of June 27th, and we're going to take a short musical break, and we're going to continue to talk about ICE a little bit, the LA Dodgers, and they have somehow kept ICE out of their parking lot. Hopefully that will continue, and we'll hear more in just a moment. Be right back with more Live from the Heartland.
or Mars. Home can be bruised.
Welcome back, all you citizens of the world. It's time for the monthly sports report with Cousin Adam James out there in California. He is a former football player at Northwestern. He is the actor and producer of a new series coming out called Doc Savage, Man of Copper. And following up on our immigration discussion with our last guest, I wanted Adam to talk a little bit about what's going on with his favorite team, or one of his favorite teams, the Los Angeles Dodgers. I go way back to Jackie Robinson era. The Dodgers were very important in my life. I always considered them to be pretty progressive until they left Brooklyn and went to the West Coast. But I was seeing in the news information that there was criticisms of the Dodgers that they weren't taking a stand on immigration. Lo and behold, the next thing I know, they were keeping ICE from coming into their parking lot. So, Adam, you're the sports guy. You're living in L.A. You were at the demonstrations. Give us a little report on the Dodgers and ICE.
Yes, well, it's great to see you, Michael. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's always great to be on Live from the Heartland. And yes, this is obviously something that's really impacting the community here in Southern California. And the Dodgers are a huge part of the community, especially those that are Hispanic in our community. They just love the Dodgers. It's a big part of everyday life. And the Dodgers have been there throughout the process of standing with the citizens and with their fans. There was some concern that they didn't make a big statement. But yes, you're correct. There was a situation that occurred where some officers were attempting to enter the parking lot, and the Dodgers just basically said, no, not here. And it was an interesting stand. And then shortly after that, they made a significant donation of $1 million towards the organizations that support the immigrant community. You know, I'm a big believer that immigration is one of our nation's greatest strengths. I believe that immigrants are a big part of what has made this country. And I feel that immigration is something that, when it's treated appropriately, can be a tremendous asset for our country. So it's interesting how the Dodgers have, of course, historically been a team that has used immigrants, as most of sports teams have. And, right. And they have positioned themselves as a sports team that has embraced this role. So I think it's really great that they have taken on this leadership position.
Well, tell me a little bit about the demonstration you were at last week. We both communicate. I was in El Paso and was out at a demonstration there, and you called me from one of the demonstrations in LA. What's going on out there in your city?
Well, I went to not just one, I went to two. There were multiple all over the city, as they were all over the country. And of course, as you know, almost all of them were completely nonviolent, great demonstrations of community strength and voicing, opinions. And one thing that has happened, of course, is there's this misunderstanding, this incorrect image that there's rioting and tremendous violence. Now, there has been some, no doubt about it, here in Los Angeles. But the Los Angeles Police Department and the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department did a great job of crowd control. Obviously, federal troops were brought in. Many experts say that the violence escalated when the troops arrived, not the other way around.
Right.
So regardless, there is this image of it being throughout the city, but in truth, it's isolated to a very small area. Specifically, it's around where the federal buildings are. Because if you think about it, this is where some people have been taken. There have been people literally taken from their job sites who have not been given a warrant. They have not had officers identify themselves and declare what they're being charged with. So family members and community members want to know what's going on. So they have gathered around these federal buildings demanding answers. And that's where there have been lines of tension and, of course, efforts by some to escalate that and make it more of an image of violence and noncompliance in our community. But in fact, our community has actually worked really hard to try to, embrace the process and be there for law enforcement, but at the same time, be there for the citizens. There's a lot of immigrants in our country, and many of them have gone through proper channels, but some haven't. And those people do need to be addressed. But I'm a firm believer that we need to be efficient. It's funny, we have this DOGE process going on, but we're not being very efficient when it comes to immigration. We're spending millions and millions of dollars to go after some people who didn't fill out their paperwork properly and have been working for the last 20 years as a line cook in a restaurant or wherever they've been. Make no doubt about it, we want to get those violent criminals. who are illegal immigrants in our country, out of our country. However, it seems that this process has been a sledgehammer to all the immigrants as opposed to a precision process.
That's for sure. Let me go back to the Dodgers because
Yes.
there's a book called Boys of Summer about the Dodgers in the old days. And, I could still name all the people from Andy Pafko to Carl Furillo, Roy Campanella, Don Newcomb. I mean, I was a Dodger lover.
Yes.
There's a book I didn't know about called Stealing Home, Los Angeles, the Dodgers, and the Lives Caught in Between. It's by a guy named Eric Nussbaum. And our friend Dave Zirin, who's been on the show, sports writer of some note, he said it's one of the 100 best books ever written. And what I saw in the little blurb about it was that, when the Dodgers moved west and then they were going to build a stadium in Chavez Ravine, I think it's called.
It is.
There were 3 Mexican communities there, Mexican-American communities. And there was a plan to build some public housing, but this was the 50s, and everything was communist this and anti-communist that, and there was something about a Red Scare, and so it wasn't built, the housing project, and it turned into the Dodgers project. And I'm just wondering if you could give us a little more on Dodger members of the team and members of the community and how the two interrelate. I do know that Billie Jean King and Magic Johnson, athletes of great renown, are both part owners of the Dodgers. So I'm wondering, are they really a progressive outfit? The owner of the Dodgers is now the owner of the LA Lakers.
Correct. Yes.
And I'm not sure what his politics are, but what do you know? What do you feel?
Well, make no doubt about it. The Dodgers historically have come to Los Angeles. You made a comment earlier about how they were progressive until they came to Los Angeles. It could be argued that was actually a really progressive move to try to bring baseball across the country, to build the West Coast fan base. It was daring. It was something that hurt Brooklyn and hurt the East Coast baseball community, but it definitely changed baseball forever. And then in regards to the Chavez Ravine and the tragedies that happened there in regards to the unfairness that occurred, that is a historical fact. Los Angeles has a pretty ugly history in regards to the treatment of Hispanics in our state, in our city, in this country. However, we are growing as a country. I believe that we are getting better as a country and growing. And I feel that this is an example of that, what's been happening with the Dodgers. There's a man named Kiki Hernandez. He's one of the Dodger players. And he's not from Los Angeles originally, but he's a Hispanic man who's been embraced by the fans of this city, and he's embraced them right back. He has been very vocal about his position about ICE and about what's happening politically in our country. He's an example of what the Dodgers are all about. They are about community. They are about passion. They're about getting out there and playing hard and giving it all they've got. So, and I think that's true for the Cubs and for the White Sox and for every sports team that's out there, the Indiana Fever and the Chicago Sky. Hey, by the way, we didn't get a chance to talk about how great the Sky played last night. So for you sports fans out there, start watching your Sky.
I have been watching. I saw them get creamed the other day, but I do try to watch them when they're on.
Yes. And by the way, I know we've got literally less than a minute, but I definitely wanted to take a moment to say, for all you Sox fans out there, it must be just amazing having the Pope wearing the Sox hat.
We're happy about that.
Yeah, and telling everybody, go Sox.
Well, the basketball is over. Hockey is over. We got baseball for a while, maybe some track and field. I'm going to start watching some soccer. I'll check in with you not only on our regular family Zoom, but I'll have you on the show again next month. Get ready. Give us some good stuff. Thank you so much, Adam James. Everyone might want to check out his Doc Savage, Man of Copper. How did they get that?
It hasn't been released yet. We'll be having information on that. Next time I'm on your show, hopefully I'll have some information about that. Okay, everybody else stay tuned. We'll be right back with the writer Ron Schulz, and he will talk to us about his new book about Teenage Runaway. He's documenting the old days with a lot of events that are close to home. Over and out till we come back with our next guest. See you around. Thanks, Adam.
you citizens of the world, younger ones in particular, you may know your history. You may know that here in Chicago, we had a lot of activity way back in the 1960s into the 70s. There were groups like Rising Up Angry, the Black Panther Party, the Young Lords. There was a newspaper called The Seed. There were people going off to farm the land, places like the Karma Farm in Wisconsin. And one of those people who was involved in all of that, and we've known each other since then, is the one and only Ron Schulz, now living up in the Northwest. Good day to you, Ron.
Hey, thank you, Michael. Yeah, it's true. We go way back, although we were kind of like on the edge of each other's memory at the time, probably. Well, you were very much in my memory anyway.
Well, you're in my memory a lot now, too. You've cranked out a number of books. These are novels. You did a book called Chicago Rage. You did a book called Home at the Edge. You did a book called Party at the End of the Rainbow. And you have a new book out, or at least coming out in the next few days, called Teenage Runaway. Give us a little bit of a history of your writing and end up with a little synopsis of Teenage Runaway.
Excellent. Yes. Well, what I'm doing now, it started out, I got one book out, and then my publisher accepted more and more. And so what we're doing is a series, Memoirs of a Memoirs of a 1960s Hippie. I think that's the technical name of the series that we've got now. And you can see it on Goodreads and Amazon.com. Two of my books are also on Barnes & Noble and what is it? There's a bunch of others. But so what I'm doing, it's history. It's personal history. It's memoir interwoven with other people's experience, including yours and people to some degree, So,
They're a lot of fun to read. They do bring back memories of the time of the Weathermen, of 68 demonstrations, of people, in the streets and doing things. The new book, let me read this. It says, "One boy, one backpack, one shot at freedom." In 1967, 15-year-old Ronald Schulz packed his bag, left a note on his dresser, and walked away from everything he knew: family, friends, home, and life as he knew it. Talk a little bit more about it. How much of it is autobiographical? How much are you making up? And what are some highlights?
Well, it's entirely autobiographical with, input from other things that help to explain the times, the books that were being read, the news events, the racial issues, animosity, denigration, kind of what we always seem to come up with, but how we deal with it, Now, in fact, the interesting thing, the thing which I at first wasn't going to include, but I did, the follow-up to running away to just in New Orleans and living on Skid Row and having that experience, and was returning and ending up on a kind of a return to my roots with my, shall I call him, gently racist grandfather. If I can put it that way. He's my grandfather. I loved him very much. He was also in the middle of dying of emphysema at the time. And, he decided to take me. I'm the only one in my family, in my birth family, that went down with my grandfather to where he came from, his origins in Alton, Illinois area. Alton, Grafton, all that, the Illinois bottom, I think they call it, which it's pretty much like the Deep South down there in terms of attitudes. And now his last brother was there, and I got to, so this is in the book, my experience meeting these people, and at the same time being a little bit concerned that they were trying to initiate me into the Klan or something like that. I mean, into the KKK Klan, not just the Schultz Hunt Klan, whatever we were. Now, that was right in the middle of the long, hot summer. Detroit was exploding, many cities around the country were exploding. That was on the news. We were listening to it on the radio on the way down. So, That's, I think, a very important part of the book, too. There's two, in other words, the book ranges from my personal experience and my personal, I guess you would say, catharsis, crisis, being bullied, the usual stuff you go through in high school, the trying to not be able to fit in, or trying to be yourself, and at the same time being ironed out into another person, which I ran away from, trying to escape. And it was a summer of love, but I didn't go to California because I was sure they were going to bust me on the way, because I kept seeing all these news reports about looking for those runaways on their way to Haight-Ashbury and all that. So I went the wrong way. I went to New Orleans. And, well, what are you going to do down there? Well, I had some money because I'd been working after school. So I had a bunch of money saved up. Of course, the first thing I do when I got there was I got robbed. Yeah, you can laugh about it now. It's okay.
Yeah, no.
But, hey, it was a survival story. It was also an exploration. It was becoming friends with a bunch of hobos and down and outers, which, of course, I was in a younger version of. And here we are working. This is before, they could mass mailing or something. I don't know. We were hand delivering advertisements all across New Orleans suburbia, Jefferson Parish and all that. But anyway, enough of just to set the scene a little bit. Of course, then I got betrayed by a priest due to a stupid mistake. I was 10 cents short, about 10 cents short on my rent, my daily rent of $1.50 a day. You see, and I couldn't get in. So I ended up going to the Catholic mission, and to make I'm not going to give too much away, but I got betrayed by a priest, beaten up by juvenile officers because I ran from them, and handcuffed and all that. That was my first experience with a serious arrest. So anyway, yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Well, I was just going to say, you keep them coming. When you're writing, do things come up and you have memories that you hadn't had before?
Yes.
Maybe talk about how have you done your writing? You get up in the morning and write. I know you're working now on promotion of the books, and not you told me you haven't been able to write as much, but you clearly have been writing in a regular way. And as someone who has also cranked out a few mostly photo books, but also has a book about the Heartland Cafe in the works,
which I'm very, very anxious to read, by the way.
Well, everyone is. We just got to get it finished. We do have a first draft for the potential agent, but
take your time, though. I've learned that. Take your time. Just take your time, because I rushed into things and it's not as good, I find out. So
what's your regimen when you're a writer, and how do you when you're laying awake at night, do you have memories and you forget them, or do you write them down? What do you do as a writer?
Okay, well, I try to write ideas down, and I've done that long before I started writing, actually, because this had been in the back of my mind, really, to be honest with you, from the very beginning. Way back there when I was with the White Panthers, I was thinking, I don't know that it'll be a book about me, but I gotta, there's got to be a history. There's got to be some, because all this is just being forgotten as it happens. We move on with our lives, and history moves on, politics moves on. But hey, where have we been? How can we understand where we are if we don't know where we've been? And I think it's an important part of history. I mean, every part is, every part makes a whole. And so, okay, how do I do it? Yeah, I take down notes. And to be honest with you, with my lifestyle of having moved all around the country and the world over the past however many years I'm alive here, 70 odd years, I lose stuff. But the very act of writing notes, little brief descriptions here and there, it puts it in the place of my memory, because then when I've discovered some of the things which I'd lost years before, I find out that rewriting the notes, I had written pretty much the same thing. So it helps. Just keep writing. Don't rush it. Just write stuff down and revise it over time. And then I meditate. Meditation, I bring myself right back into the scene that I was. And, if you have the time and the ability to, be left alone a bit by people who are constantly wants your attention. Hey, my family, whoever, man, they want my attention, they got it, But if you can put yourself into that for a little bit, get off in the woods, it can become very clear. I've had dreams too that have taken me right back into the scene of action. Sometimes, of course, dreams also throw in other things. You can't just take them verbatim, but they can help. They can give you a spirit of what was happening. The fear, the trauma, the drama, whatever. You get into that. And now, you don't just write it once, but computers are wonderful because I was scribbling this stuff on paper for years, and then computers help because you don't have to erase everything or throw it away. You can just cut and paste and move things around.
Well, I like that. I had an English teacher who told me early on that you have to rewrite too. He says you think the words are golden the first time they come out of you, but you really have to rewrite. Okay, let's sum this up. You got a number of books out. I've read 3 of them: Chicago Rage, Home at the Edge, Party at the End of the Rainbow. And as soon as it comes out, I'm going to get Teenage Runaway and read that. Tell us the publisher, how they get it, and go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, of course. And I have to put a word in for Tumbleweed Books, which is my publisher, and I'm really happy about them. They're up in Canada. They're doing a marvelous job. I swear to God, I couldn't, these covers come from Tumbleweed Publishing, come from, people love the covers. And you do tell a book by the cover. I mean, it's too bad. They say you don't, but or you shouldn't. And it's true. I mean, you can't really judge a book by the cover. But if you don't have a good cover, nobody's going to pick it up. Nobody's going to read it.
Ron Schulz, it's really great talking to you. Tell us how people can get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you personally.
Okay, well, I'm on Goodreads. I'm on Amazon. Ronald Schulz. Just Ronald Schulz. There's no T in my name. I'm the original Silesian German descendant. But okay, you can find me on Goodreads by the title of my book. Now, unfortunately, every title has, there's other people with the same title or even the same name. You know how many Ronald Schulzes there are out there? I never knew until I did this. And people are finding me all over the world. But Ronald Schulz, Chicago Rage, probably the easiest. There's, as far as I know, no other copy called Chicago Rage. So if you can just look that one up and then just look author, click on the author, click on my name, and you'll find my books. That's on Amazon. Barnes & Noble has a couple of my books. I don't know why they only take 2, but, we'll figure it out.
You'll get it.
And this one that's coming out now has already got, a certain amount of push behind it. Just being out there on NetGalley really helped it a lot. And I recommend that to people if you can. Get your pre-published on NetGalley and people can give it a read and a review.
Okay, Ron, I want to thank you for coming on. We're running out of time here. Sure. I'm looking forward to getting the book, and we'll see you on your next book, if not before. I want to thank everybody who tuned in to Live from the Heartland today. I want to clue you in that last week we had a couple of interesting interviews with Richard Perlman on his adoption project, and we had Andy Pierce on the Uptown Theater. This week I'll be on Saturday at the Main Street Fair in Evanston with my photos and books. Sunday I'll be on the front porch at 1509 Lunt with my front porch gallery. I'm not sure who we got on next week, but we'll have some interesting guests and want everyone to do good in the world, particularly Ron Schulz, who's here as our last guest, Adam James, who gave us a sports report, and Torrence Gardner, who talked about ice here in Rogers Park. See you next week. Do good in the world. The world needs all the good that you and I and the rest of us do together. All power to the people. We can do it. Over and out. We want to thank you for watching the Live from the Heartland show. New episodes air every Friday beginning at 9 a.m. Central Time. Episodes air each following Thursday on CAN TV, 9 p.m. in Sweet Home Chicago on Channel 21 or streaming everywhere else at cantv.org. Audio episodes go live on WLUW each Saturday, 9 a.m. on the left end of your dial at 88.7 FM or streaming everywhere worldwide at WLUW.org. They're available on Apple and Spotify podcasts by looking up Live from the Heartland on either platform and are also broadcast on Lumpen Radio each Friday at 9 a.m. on 105.5 FM and streaming at lumpenradio.com. I'm Michael James, and I'm glad to have been your host. Until next time, remember, do good in the world because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. All power to the people. Over and out.
Come to limb. Are you doing the best you can? Tell me, are you doing